Hello again and welcome to another episode of Two Peas on a Pod. We're back today with the second part of our discussion about regular giving. Now in part one, we didn't get enough time to discuss all the elements we wanted to cover off. So today we're talking a little bit more about stewardship. We're looking at upgrades, when you should upgrade a supporter and by how much. We talk about mid-value regular giving, the downsides of membership programs, and how donors build their RG portfolios and how they budget their giving, what comes in and what comes out. And to that end, we're also discussing some of the mystery giving, mystery shopping we've done, talking about what we like and what we don't like. We're also going to revisit Giles's target of focusing on 1% attrition for regular giving, and we discuss why this won't be possible, particularly for some types of RG recruitment, such as face-to-face. And we also share some of the Blue Frog research into how the cancellation process works. So from when somebody first starts thinking about cancelling to how that follows through at the end of the day. As in part one, there's loads of tactical ideas in here about how we can improve the recruitment and retention of regular givers. And finally, we've also got another giveaway, and we've got two books here. So number one is the brilliant Ken Burnett's newly revised copy of Relationship Fundraising. And number two is another chance to win a copy of Lisa Sargent's fabulous Thankology. And all you need to do is make a suggestion about a question or an idea or a topic that you'd like us to discuss or debate in the Two Peas on the Pod podcasts. That's it. Simply add a suggestion in the comments on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and the ones we use will receive a book. That's it. Pretty easy, isn't it? So now let's move on to the podcast, and hope you enjoy it. Hello again. Good to see you, and we are back with our second part of our regular giving special. I'm not sure if it's going to be a 2 or a 3-parter, but yes. But Giles is in the driving seat for this one. So without any more further ado,
we've got to be quite prompt today, haven't we? Because you're off to art class.
No, football training tonight with my son.
Oh, you called it art class on the email.
Bonnet, that was last night. That was why I was late.
No, it's the way you describe football.
Yeah.
Okay, so last time we thought we'd cover regular giving. We didn't cover it all. Just let me recap on what we did. We talked about recruitment, and the key takeout from that, as far as I was concerned, is the recruitment proposition for a regular giver is different from the recruitment proposition for a cash giver, and I don't think enough people recognise that. And then, in a nod to Lisa Sargent, because if I didn't do it, she'd have my guts for garters, the thank you for a regular giver is completely different than the thank you for a cash giver, because you're thanking them for a different thing. And again, I don't think a lot of people get that right. Then we talked about stewardship, and that was where I got to my most provocative and said that I believe that all stewardship pieces should be pure stewardship pieces. They should have no ask, there should be no response mechanism, and no business reply envelope. And people push back at me and say, well, you've got to have a business reply envelope because you've got to make it easy for people to give. And I said, no. You want to be outside in. You want to give the donor what they want to hear. The moment you put a BRE in the envelope, you're saying, I'd like a response. If you don't put a BRE in, you're saying, oh my God, this is just for me. And I was thinking, if you got a reply envelope in your birthday present from your favourite aunt, how would that make you feel?
Oh, I would say she knows me incredibly well, because the problems that get in the way of me thanking would be buying the stamp, getting the envelope. But if I could just simply write that and pop it in the postbox, that would be the aunt that knew me and would get a thank you letter every single time.
Okay. Well, that's you. We're going to do attrition, but just first of all, the two other main drivers. One, of course, is upgrading. I don't think there's a lot of contention around that. I think it's once a year or twice a year, dependent on giving history. I think the critical thing here is that the fundamental point of everything I'm going to say in this piece is that every communication has to leave the donor feeling better after it than before it.
Ideally.
And that has, no, not ideally, essentially.
Essentially.
And that applies more than anything to the upgrade mailing, because you have to do the upgrade mailing in such a way that the donor is inspired to want to upgrade, and it also feels equally happy and content and having a good experience if they haven't upgraded because you've told them that it's okay. So that's where you need the really careful wording to make sure they have a good experience whether or not they upgrade.
Or indeed the upgrade telephone call.
Or the upgrade telephone call. I'm sorry, I'm or the upgrade digital, what's the, I don't know.
Indeed.
You've taken me right off my stride now. The other thing about the upgrade is, of course, the amount. When I was doing regular giving 25 years ago and doing a lot of it, our CRM systems weren't that good. Now the CRM system should enable you to determine exactly what the right upgrade amount should be for a particular donor. I did hear about one charity that asked their donors to upgrade by 100%. Please double your gift. And they got extraordinary success, absolutely phenomenal success. Except that over 3 months, the attrition rate just shot through the roof.
Were they face-to-face recruits?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't, because we know that with face-to-face recruits, they...
It works well for mid-value, you see, that approach. So a high-value donor, that works well for.
What, doubling their...
Yeah,
Okay.
You can do even more than that.
Fine. Presumably, you need to be based on their giving history.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But you know, all I'm saying is you need to be careful that you do decide what the giving amount should be.
Absolutely. And with mid-value, what you're often looking at is you're looking at the cash giving that may come alongside a regular gift, and it's that gives you a direction. So if somebody's giving you £1,000 a time and they're on £20 a month, they can afford a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's where your knowledge of the donor comes in.
There you go.
About what you can ask them. And then finally, of course, there's the cash ask. And I think what we found, and I think it's still the same, is one a year at Christmas. Your charities, you look a bit, not quite sure there, let's come to that. Your charity sends out a Christmas appeal to all its donors. Why wouldn't you send it to your regular givers? You don't make it special for them. They're getting the charity's Christmas appeal with a powerful ask for money.
Yep.
But I would say that was the only one. You looked a bit skew then.
It depends on the calls area. Particularly if you're talking to people on a healthcare calls, what they'll often do is, one of the things that I talk about is your giving rituals, and the gimme giving ritual is Christmas, which you're absolutely right on. But it's not just healthcare. It can be across a range of different causes, but there will often be a personal event that you won't know about. So it might be the death of somebody, or it might be somebody who was successfully treated for a condition, and that will be a super important date. So one of the things that we always recommend is to look for regular gifts that arrive, and when I mean regular, I mean ones that are coming each and every year on about the same date, rather than an automated RG, because that will be very, very important for that person. And often Christmas and that date are the only two times they give, and they may ignore every other appeal. Okay,
that's a new one on me. So tell me a bit more. What would you send? You send people on the anniversary of their signing up? How do you?
You've got to work it out. This is one of the problems they have, and again, it's more of a mid-value thing, but it's not entirely mid-value. And you get this. We found this very, very strongly in the US. We did some mid-value research in the US about 8 years ago, shortly after Donald Trump got elected last time, which was there's some interesting stories there that might be quite pertinent to the current situation. But we were speaking to mid-value donors about their giving patterns, and a lot of them said, the appeals that I get show me that you don't really know who I am, because I only give to you on this date, and this date is the anniversary of my wife's death, or something along those lines. And that's the only time I give to you. And when you send me these appeals, I simply put them in the bin. We had one person actually say to us in that study, and this is quite rare, but you do hear it. He said, I plan all my giving, and when you don't recognise when I give and you just send me appeals, all it does is make me push your renewal date 1 year down the line. So it pushes them back to starting from zero. But we've seen that same in research. We've seen that same idea about the fact that I give to you when it works for me, not you. We've seen that in the UK. We've seen that in Canada. We've seen it in Australia. We've seen it in Norway. Pretty much every country we've done that study in, and it comes out.
And you're talking about mainly mid-level donors.
Yeah, because that's more of the. You'll find it below that as well, but but we probably spend more time looking at motivations for mid-level because they're more likely to be planned.
Okay, when I was preparing for this podcast, I was talking about low-level individual givers.
There you go.
I think mid-level givers are a different beast, and we'd only started to investigate them, and there's so much potential in them
that
we
is
only
where the
started
potential
touching.
is, yeah.
Only started touching. Let's, if you go back to the individual giver,
Gotcha.
your rank and file individual, £10, £20, £30 a month individual giver, I would say that they would have only one ask for money, one or two upgrades, and that'd be the only ask for money at all.
Yeah, and
that's what I would say. And if you want to argue,
no. That's sort. If you were talking about, strong RG files. I worked for years, for example, with ActionAid. They were very, they weren't very good. They weren't very cash responsive. Membership offers, for example, where people are giving a regular gift with to a membership type offer, they're normally pretty poor. Like National Trust, for example, pretty poor at giving extra money. But Christmas is perhaps the best time to get them, when they're feeling a little more festively generous.
yeah, I mean it's probably always been the same,
Oh,
hasn't it? Right back hundreds of years.
The houses.
There'll be something about.
Yeah. We can probably go back to the start of whatever organised religion was the first one. Some sort of animist type ceremony.
Okay, so now let's get on to attrition.
Bang, let's go.
And what I said to you last time was that I was asking why shouldn't we be aiming, once you've taken into account people who've died, obviously, why shouldn't we be aiming for less than 1% attrition? And I was expecting you to say that was completely impossible, out of the question, and you said it would be tough. And I think most people watching this now will be far more than tough. I think they'll say it was impossible.
Depends how you recruit.
Let's not get too confused. Just tell me, why isn't aiming for less than 1% attrition a reasonable thing to be doing?
Life changes, and that's the problem. Your life changes, and in some of our latest research that we've done around legacy giving, for example, we found that people are more likely than not to remove a charity from their will when they reach the end of their life. And when you say why, things are different now. And that's the issue. You might, for example, sign up to give a regular gift to, for example, a cancer charity. And that might have been prompted by the death of somebody. 20 years later, no more cancer in your life, but dementia has appeared. Your spouse has got dementia or something. Suddenly that becomes the more important concern. And that might cause you to shift. And one of the things that we discussed last time is that people do have a bit of a portfolio, and that portfolio is always moving, and sometimes those things fall out at the bottom. So, you might have treated somebody brilliantly. If money isn't, quite, they don't have plenty of money, then they might prioritise somebody else. So that would be one reason that I would take into account.
That feels to me as if the relationship is transactional. They're supporting cancer, they reach a different stage in their life, they move on and support something else. If you take Professor Adrian Sargent's drivers of loyalty, and loyalty is what we're talking about, there are three drivers of loyalty. One is commitment, satisfaction, and trust. Now, let's suppose that all of our communications with our donors, all the stewardship pieces, all the upgrade pieces, everything is working towards building on commitment, actively commitment, satisfaction, active satisfaction, and trust. Trust that they know their money's going to be well spent on the right things. And they do this for month after month, year after year after year. Why, after 20 years, having had this fantastic experience, really feeling partners in the cause of ending cancer, why do they suddenly say, oh, well, I've done cancer now. Yeah, I feel completely loyal to them. Yeah, I've been totally satisfied. Yeah, I trust them completely. But I'm going to move on to something else. Why would they do that?
Amongst the reasons,
Well, let's do them one by one.
let's do one by one. One is how the money's been used. So progression, what has happened, and you've got to remember that the people that we are dealing with they're not experts, and sometimes you might hear about one cause. I have been giving to them a long time. There has not been that much progression in terms of developing a treatment or a cure for a specific type of cancer, perhaps, and I now have a more pressing problem in my life. I'm going to transfer to that. I don't regret giving them, but I don't believe my £10 a month is really doing that much. So I'm going to shift my money elsewhere.
But that means that there's a failure in the organisation to make you feel so committed, have such trust in what they're doing with your money that you will have got had such good feedback with what your money is achieving, that you'll feel really warm to the organisation. You'll defend the organisation and in the pub to the nth degree because you really, really believe commitment, satisfaction, trust. I would argue that if you do all of that and do it really well, people would not cancel. That you're allowing it to be too easy. And I think that if you've really given people a great experience, if every communication has left them feeling better after it than before it, what communication is it that's going to make them feel better than they did at the beginning of it, but it's going to cause them to cancel?
Well, as I go back to that point, it's about value. When you're, exchanging money for anything, it is the value that you receive in return, and your value might be the work that's happening or how it makes you feel. But if something happens to you and it shifts your perspective, it shifts your focus in terms of what you believe is important, then that is going to shift your giving. I don't believe you'll be able to hang on to that money. If somebody's got pots of cash, they'll probably set up a DD and another DD. That's absolutely fine.
We're talking about your rank and file giver who wants to make a difference to the world. It's not just a transaction; it's a difference to the world. They signed up a regular direct debit. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
and they're going to cancel.
But then you've got a you have a league table, and you've always got a league table. Your ones at the top are going to continue, but you've got other ones that might slip down, and they might slip down because of bad treatment. And the ones at the top which get best treatment, 100%, they're going to stay at the top. What we're talking about really now is a hypothetical situation, what might cause somebody to cancel, and you will find people who will say, particularly at the end of their lives, I've got a certain amount of cash. Like, we had one person said to us before, and this is a real story. I've supported that charity for years. They were always on about me to increase my regular gift, so I increased it. I took them out of my will as a result. So, people weigh things up. And when you've got a set amount of money and a set amount of causes, and something causes one particular charity to go up on that list, you may well refocus. You may well refocus your giving, and that might include reductions. For example, after we were doing some studies shortly after the safeguarding scandal, and we found that some people were cancelling regular gifts. Some people in that were cancelling regular gifts to organisations that were not even impacted by the safeguarding scandal. They weren't even mentioned by it, but they were cancelling their gifts as well because they didn't want to take the risk that their money would be misused. And so you find that in these situations that people will respond to what is most important to them at that specific time, and that is the reason why I don't think you'll be able to get it down below 1%.
Okay. Then we need to stop on that one now because we've taken that one as far as it can go.
Okay.
But you and I are talking on the assumption that people are getting the best possible experience, that every communication they get is making them
100%.
feel better than
100%.
the one before. And that's a load of rubbish. They're not. Knowing that we were doing these 2 Ps in a pod, I started some more regular giving mystery shopping exercises, and they were dreadful.
Yeah.
So let me go through some of the things. But one of them is the first letter I got back was a kind of, "Dear Mr. Pegram, thank you for your gift. Now, would you please confirm these details about your bank? And here's our direct debit guarantee, and here's our gift aid declaration."
Yep.
Now, immediately, I've just made this regular gift commitment, and the first thing I get back is a hygiene form, basically. It says thank you very much at the top, but it doesn't mean it at all. So I'm completely turned off. I've been given a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on.
The comparison on that, just to keep it a little wider, is airlines. One of the you have these different approaches. Is a business customer focused or provider focused, as it were? And airlines broadly, outside of business class and first class, you do everything for them. You go online, you have to check in yourself, you queue up for ages, you have to do this queue, you do everything for them, and on the basis that you get a relatively cheap flight. And it's a horrible experience. It's one of the reasons why we often hate flying, unless of course every now and again you get someone else is paying for your flight and you travel business class or something along those lines. But I think that is the issue that you're citing there, that somebody in the organisation has said, I need all of this data, get them to fill that form in. And they may well do it, they may not enjoy it, but I think you might be telling us, Giles, there may be better ways.
Better ways of?
Getting people to engage with you before you start getting them to...
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me give you some other bad ones. I mean, a lot of the regular givers I signed up for in July have sent me more donation forms and more BREs. So they haven't been satisfied with the regular gift I've signed up for. They've asked for more money. I've cancelled my direct debit. So rather than keep the regular giving going, the regular gift going, they forfeited it by asking me for more money when I didn't want to give it. So again, I just think you need to be so careful that a regular giver is like the proverbial Ming vase, they talk about with Sakya Dharma, with a direct donor, that giver is there for life unless you blow it up. Yep. Because they have to cancel their direct debit. So the essence has to be on stopping them cancelling, not trying to get an extra few pence out of them.
What you'll be looking at, obviously, if you've got an organisation that's working in very large numbers, they might be testing and testing and testing. And one of the things that you will find on a test model is one of the best times to get somebody to increase their regular gift is quite shortly after they've signed up. So they will be applying that model, and that's going to drive them more money. I don't know if they're going to be looking at subsequent attrition rates, but that is something that people cite. My approach is, and my favourite approach is very old school. I want to get at least 2 cash gifts, and then you're going to get a highly committed regular giver. Oh yeah, 2 cash gifts. within an 18-month period. You call them up if you can. That is a very effective way of getting a regular giver.
Okay, then you're talking about converting, therefore, cash givers into regular givers.
Yes.
Okay, and that's outside the scope of what I want to talk about, because my experience is too far to go, and
Carry on.
I'm really just talking about recruiting a regular giver, keeping a regular giver.
But again, it comes down to how you're recruiting. You've got face-to-face, you've got online, you've got TV, you've got two-step, you've got one-step, you've got direct recruitment from DM type approaches, you've got direct on press advertising, you've got getting people QR codes on their phone. There are so many variants, and all have different benefits.
But there's a real danger in that. It is that there are so many variants now that fundraisers get caught up in the process rather than the experience of the donor.
Yeah.
You're talking about how did they get from A to B, and you don't really care what happened to them at a certain point on the journey. So it only needs one letter to say, we cannot thank you enough for your support over 5 years, when actually you've only given for 5 months. That only needs to happen once. And you can see how easily it would happen. But it happened to me, and I thought, no way is that charity going to get any more money out of me. Cancel.
You're hard down, Giles.
But that's why I want to get down to the less than 1%.
Okay,
so another thing is gatekeeping. And I get far too many charities where there clearly isn't one person responsible for the relationship. So that you're recruited as a direct giver, and suddenly, instead of being a precious asset to the organisation, you're a resource to the organisation. And everyone, online shopping team, campaigns, etc., all have access to you. So there's no supporter journey. And I remember one charity I gave to, I gave the first gift, I got a welcome pack, and then the next 5 emails I got were from the online shopping team. And I just thought, that is not the right way to treat a donor who's just signed up for a precious gift, a regular gift. They're a precious asset, not a resource.
Yep. See that a lot, in terms of the shopping that we do, particularly with emails. Emails are deemed cheap, so why not go out? But eventually you train people to ignore your emails, and we find again with mid-value, it's much more pronounced that if you really want to engage somebody, you take them offline. But the cheaper stuff with the lower response rates, whether it's something like the shopping team or some sort of online lottery type raffle thing, you'll get hit with loads of those, and they come and come and come. God, I've charted some of these over the course of a year, and hundreds of emails come out.
But if you're going to try to get below 1%, you have to stop that. There has to be somebody as a gatekeeper. And I said to Paul, I was going to use the word gatekeeper. He said, oh, no, gatekeeper is so negative. And I said, I want to be negative. I want there to be somebody who has the authority to say, no, you're not going to write to my donors like that. And you should be able to put up at the end of the year all of the communications the donors received during the year and look at them and say, are we proud of that? Is that what we wanted our donor to receive? And if it isn't, then you have to say, well, what are the learnings from that? How do we then change that and make it different next time? You may want to put in a campaigning request because there's a big campaign in the year. So you build that into the supporter journey right at the beginning. There may be suddenly a campaign comes up during the year, and then I think the gatekeeper has to say, is it so big that we should try and adjust the journey accordingly? Or is it just a little thing that we ignore? We just say, no, you cannot have access to our donors for that activity.
Yep, probably create a few arguments.
The more the better. But I'm talking about, oh no, you can't do that. So and so has to have access. So and so has to have access. But if you let everyone have access, if there's no gatekeeper, you're going to get increased attrition.
Yeah,
because you're not going to get the sense that every communication leaves them feeling better after it than before it.
Yeah, and ring fencing is is still a problem. Sometimes you will lose very good donors because they've been ring fenced for something else because it's their turn, which can be quite problematic if it's one of your peak appeals. But yeah.
Oh, there's one other example. There's a lovely chap called Adam, from one of the charities I give. I set up a direct debit to. And Adam was in touch with me 28 emails between the 2nd of May and the 27th of August. 28 emails, and they were all identical, all exactly the same. Well, no, different wording, but exactly the same format. And there wasn't an ask, and in a way you thought, well, maybe it's good to, he probably, well, Adam, not the real person, but whoever was creating Adam, probably thought that was good stewardship, sending all this information. But would a donor really want that much? They'd have to open the email, look, see, is there anything there I'm interested in? And to do that 28 times in a few months just feels to me to be not the right way of building a good donor experience.
Again, it's one of these things that comes down to how committed someone is. The oft-repeated refrain from a CEO signing off on a letter, well, that's far too long, I wouldn't read all that. Well, you're not a donor. Some people love the insight and information. We did some work a number of years ago with the charity, which is World Animal Protector now, was Whisper a number of years ago. And in terms of analysing online communications with them, we found that the most highly committed would open and engage with everything. It might only be 4% of the file, but there would be a very, very strongly committed group. And in effect, this relates to anything, that when you're trying to work out a journey, when you're trying to work out who gets what, one of the best ways of doing that is to ask people, you ever interested in raffles? A lot of people will say no. Some people say, oh, I love a raffle, me. We love raffles. And then you send it to them. The telephone is a great instrument. And again, I keep rattling on about mid-value. One of the best things you can do to a mid-value donor is ring them up and say, thank you for your gift. Was there any particular reason for it today? And then you'll get the story. And that works for everyone, really. But it's in effect, how do we work out which journey is best for each person? Because that's going to give them their level of satisfaction they're looking for. And some people literally don't want anything.
You're being really positive about the way.
Oh, you know me, Giles.
Mr.
Fundraising Sunshine, I am. Everyone loves me.
Because I can't afford to do the mystery shopping too often, too long. When I do some regular giving, sometimes I have to cancel the regular giving because outside. So I had a phone call yesterday from a charity where I cancelled the direct debit. Mm-hmm. And I thought, they're going to talk to me about why and what happened. No, the thing said, well, you've cancelled your direct debit. Would you like to start one at half the amount that you cancelled? You've cancelled. Would you like one half price? And I thought, you have no understanding of what motivates a donor. You haven't tried to find out why I've cancelled. You simply tried to sell me a half-price product. How's that going to help?
It's identifying the price-sensitive donor, really. But again, someone might have tested that within their program that they're running at the moment, that's the best way to reconvert people. I can't remember what. I've got about 20% in my mind for some reason, I'm not sure, but about 20% of cancelled DDs can be reconverted. But it might be they've come back and said, if we halve it, will you sign up? And they might get a relatively successful re-sign up rate. How that's going to leave the 80 or 90% that don't like it, that's another matter. They might be gone forever, but I doubt you'll have left them with a particularly a sweet taste in their mouth. People don't like to say no, particularly to charities. Sometimes it's a real struggle for them. And, one of the recommendations we have like a 7-point program at Blue Frog in terms of lapsing, whether it's cash lapse or RG in terms of what you do. And the last one is let them go gracefully. Let them go gracefully at the end. If they can't afford it, and a lot can't, that's the issue. A lot can't afford it, and you need to be respectful of that.
I would even push back against that.
Push away.
If you've done the Agent Sargent work, if you've got them loyal, if you've got them committed, if you've got them trusting that their money is being spent well, if you've got them satisfied, if you really got them as partners in the organisation, and they're giving, say, £10 a month, and they lose their job, and they have to cut back on their direct debit. Why wouldn't you have your charity as the last direct debit they would cancel after their pet insurance and their whatever?
But
Why shouldn't we aim at that?
You definitely can aim for that. 100%. You can aim for that. And when you speak to people about their DDs and you talk about the process of DD cancellation in the UK, people will often talk about the next Netflix goes first, but it's problematic. If people have suddenly been squeezed, let's say, they've been moved, reduced hours or something like that, or they can't get overtime or something like that, or another child has come along and they've got to take into account that, or big car repair or a boiler, you're looking to save everywhere at that point. And that's when you're starting to balance things up. My child or the charity, or my family or the charity. And your child and your family are always going to win, in a situation like that. But people will do things like Netflix or gym membership or this subscription product, and the charities tend to stick around. It can be really quite painful for them to cancel. And often what you'll find in that process is they will start to blame you, the charity, for the reason why they're cancelled, i.e. you haven't shown me how my money's been used, or you haven't said thank you, or you send me too many emails. But it would be a in terms of trying to reach that level of emotional equilibrium, there's a lot going there, and I really don't think that we can take the external world out of this decision-making process. One of the things that we often used to talk about years ago with fundraising, was good fundraising in many ways knocked people slightly off kilter. It made them feel slightly uncomfortable about what's going on in the world, or slightly uncomfortable about what's happened to a child or something like that. And they can get equilibrium back by giving. I'm part of the solution now, rather than ignoring it. But there are so many shocks that are coming at the moment. Like you might have, what we're seeing, in the Middle East, or what we've seen in Ukraine, and we're going to get different stories coming up now, with President Trump coming to power, and people are trying to maintain a sense of control, and who they give to, when they give to, and how they give to is one of those elements. So another reason why the 1% is even harder to achieve.
I pushed at the less than 1%, and I've tried to push a lot at the things we can do internally to change that. The way that we can get the hygiene factors right, the way that we can get the basics right, the way that we can avoid the stupid mistakes that I've made.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you came up with some word, you cannot take the external world out of the decision-making process.
No.
And at the end of the day, however well we do things, the external world is going to have an impact, and I have to put my hand up and say, "Yep, I agree."
Oh,
but still, we do everything internally we can first.
Oh, 100%, and you will be last on the list to go if you do everything. You will be last on the list to go, and when you speak with people, you really have to understand that people budget this. They might not have much money. Let's say they're bringing in, for their family £1,000, a month, and they might be giving 5 or 6 DDs. That's quite a lot, and cancelling 1 or 2 of those can be quite a big change. And when things are stressful, that can happen. But I 100% agree. We should be focusing on, giving them value for their money, really.
Value, commitment, trust, satisfaction,
absolutely.
Loyalty.
Showing them that they're a valued member of a valued group. That's the key element here.
That's satisfaction and that's trust.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we may be coming towards an end, and there's just a lot you want to talk about. The one thing I do want to say is I do think a lot of fundraisers take their donors as fools. And something you and I
didn't
often,
say that.
I think we've talked about this often. You've got 30-year-old donors thinking about 60-year-old So you've got 30-year-old fundraisers think about 60-year-old donors, and they think they know better. And the fact is they don't. The 60-year-olds are getting wiser, more in touch with the world, and any 30-year-old that thinks they can get one over a 60-year-old donor is being very foolish indeed.
I think I'd probably say it slightly differently. I wouldn't necessarily put it in that conflict. I think there's almost an assumption, and I think that's the difference. I find as somebody who is now, what's somebody who's in their 60s? Am I know octogenarian, septuagenarian. I don't know what 60s is. You'd probably know that with
Nope.
your Latin studies. That your perspective of life does change. And I think that's the thing that happens. I did a blog post today on a test that was done. And it was 2 outer envelopes, one for a Christmas appeal. And it was really old fashioned, Victoriana type one. And, the regular, let's modernise this. Let's make it look a bit contemporary, which normally comes from a younger fundraiser. Response rate halved. Response rate halved. And what we've got to remember is, the relationship that somebody has with a charity may be far longer than the other person's been alive.
Yep.
And it's recognizing that. And, it's one of the reasons that I, constantly pump out, speak to donors, learn from them, ask what they like. There are so many things that pass for, innovation and, not necessarily best practice, but standard practice in the sector, such as rebranding or developing new giving products that are just not going to work. They might be attractive to a younger fundraiser wanting to make their mark, but for a miserable old sod like me, it's going to be, no, that's not going to work. And I'm sure you're the same, Giles. You look at ideas now, and someone will show you that, say, "Oh, what do you think about this idea?" And you say, "You're going to struggle." And 99 times out of 100, they will struggle. There might be the odd one that does break through and flies. If somebody had come to me a few, we've discussed this before. Somebody come to me a dozen years ago and said, "I've got a great idea. We're going to ask people to go out in their garden, fill up a great big bucket with water, fill it with all the ice cubes they've got in their fridge and tip it over their head." I'd have said, well, that's not going to work. But the fact is, it did. So that there are elements that will come along that will, that have to make us reconsider, what works in fundraising. But again, without the mobile phone, that idea would never have worked, because you had to film yourself and show off about it, didn't you, as an approach?
Let's get back to regular giving,
Okay.
please, because you put out a survey of our viewers, and most of them said they wanted us to discuss regular giving.
Yeah, about 50%.
So what I would like to ask them is whether we've covered the matter to their satisfaction. And if we haven't, what else would they like us to talk about? What else would they like us to cover? What do they not feel happy about? What do they think we're saying that's so rubbish? I'd really like, if we can, to get some feedback from the viewer. You asked us to talk about regular giving. We've talked about regular giving. I've said probably everything I have to say on the subject. I've got one final thing to say, but is there anything?
Oh, I'm just, in terms of regular giving, there are rules about regular giving. When you're putting together propositions, and I was chatting to some people at Hearing Dogs the other day. We developed a product for them years ago, which was Sponsor a Hearing Dog. There's so many regular giving products we've done at Blue Frog. We've done, sort of sponsor a kennel, sponsor a kitty cabinet, loads of them. And we found through testing that there were a number of different rules, about these things. And I think that's something to bear in mind when you're putting together product ideas, that, rather than just asking for money, when you're asking for that regular gift, what are the drivers and what are the barriers that you need to overcome?
Yep, absolutely.
And it's no longer, when you're asking for somebody, somebody can look, can I afford to give £25 now? With a regular gift, it's, can I afford to give, £10 for a number of years hence? And one of the things that we discovered made RG recruitment far more successful was breaking the value down. So, in the olden days at ActionAid, so many of the most successful child sponsorship headlines were not just about sponsoring a child, but it was about the financial impact. And we had one ad that ran for years, which was originally was, do you really need £10 as much as he does? And that was broken down to 50 pence, because it was 50 pence a day was the gift. And we had other ones that were comparison. We had one called Off the Shoulder, and there was a picture of a woman with a fashionable jumper of the time, and how much that jumper would cost versus how much it might cost at that point to sponsor a child. And so within that framework, explaining how much £10 a month is, which is 33 pence a day on average, that places that in context. And so there are techniques that we can use for that. Also within that framework, demonstrate the beneficiary as a single entity, a single person. When we were looking at, we were working with National Trust, for example, that focus on a specific area of work within membership could be very powerful. But we also found incentives were great there. The big breakthrough that we had for National Trust was 3 months free membership. Now that can work across a whole range of different offers. And then we added to that, get your free National Trust binoculars or your hip purse. And all of these worked. And it's not just a freebie. You're not just giving something away. You're giving something that will reinforce their brand ownership. So, the National Trust is hugely loved brand, particularly by old buggers like us, and giving people that level of branding, a little thing that they can wear, demonstrating that they're a long-term member. People like that. People value those elements. So there are different techniques that you can put into the mix for regular gifts, either to reduce those barriers or to increase the value of that of membership. And giving people some sort of badge type device is one of those. But the downside of that is that, as I've mentioned, any membership scheme, people are much less likely to give subsequent cash gifts to that. You'll be looking at 6 or 7% of that file. So there are techniques and devices that we can use. And the point that you raised as well, Giles, on feedback, our most successful feedback pieces were completely non-designed. So our most successful feedback pieces were super personal, handwritten out as stamped, things stuffed in the envelope that you might not expect. It might be a cutting from a newspaper, or it might be a plan of something that the money had been spent on. All of those real elements work incredibly well to engage people. So, when that money is guaranteed, as it were, you're giving £10 you're getting £10 a month. Invest in those donors like you're constantly re-recruiting them, and show them how their money is making a difference. And then we could chat about upgrades, for example, and how you might be able to, how you might be able to convert a cash donor to a regular donor, and how you might be able to upgrade them. So let's say you've got a donor that's giving you, let's say, a couple of £100. Let's call it £240 a year, purely for my maths, which isn't brilliant. So a donor is giving you £240 a year for some reason, and they're giving cash. They're giving 1 or 2 gifts a year. They're giving 2 or 3, I should say. So £80 3 times a year, and you'll get 240. See, I told you the maths, would work for me. And one of the things you can do, and this is what happens after a couple of gifts have come in. You need a couple of gifts. Is to ring them up and say, over the course of the last year, you've given us £240, and it's a telephone call. That is a fabulous gift for us. That's putting you in our top percentage of supporters. What one of the problems that we have is, we don't necessarily know if you're going to be giving us that money. Would you convert it to a regular gift? And as part of that process, one of the things that you can do is say, we won't ask you for anything more. All we do is show you how that money has made a difference. And then everything else you give, totally discretionary, up to you. And it depends how much they're giving. The more they're giving to you, the more likely they'll convert that to a regular gift. And at that point, that's when you can ask people to double their gift. Because if they can give to you, 80 quid as a one-off, and you're asking for £20 a month, £40 a month is probably going to be manageable for them. So that sort of process happens, but then you just give them great feedback, and then you can upgrade subsequently. But that program works brilliantly as a way of recruiting highly committed, which will be very close to your 1% type supporters. For anything else on RG that comes to mind off the top of my head? Not really. I think that's it.
So let me back off the 1%, and let's be realistic and say, supposing a charity wanted to improve its attrition from 10% to 5% a year.
Okay. Oh, they're doing well if they've got 10% attrition. Excellent. That's old school child sponsorship, that is. Well done.
Okay. Let's assume they are.
Yep.
They're very good. They've got 10% and they want to get it to 5%.
Yep.
I did the math last night. So if they get 10% attrition, then after 6 years, they've still got 53% of their donor base.
Cool.
If they can reduce their attrition to 5%, then at the end of 6 years, they've got 74% of their donor base. So that's 21% extra.
Fabulous.
So if you can halve attrition, not even get it down below 1%, but halve it, you could get 21% higher donor base after 5 years, 6 years. That then has a massive impact on lifetime value, which in my world means you reinvest that in the recruitment of regular givers. And that way you're in an upward spiral rather than the downward spiral that many are today. And that is, I'm afraid, Mark, is my final word.
No,
if you want to say anything else, I think we'll let you go off to your training.
Just to say on that thing, absolutely. If somebody came to me and said, I want to halve my RG attrition, key point, take it offline. Take it offline. If you're recruiting regular givers online, take it off. Look to what you can give people. Less print, more focused on giving them that experience of being a supporter. And you've got to remember all those key need states. It's not just about information. It's stuff that they can use to show off, that they can feel that they've got more control over a frightening situation. There's a whole host of things you can do. But yeah, 100%. In terms of those numbers, yes, if you can reduce your attrition by that much, then definitely go for it. The only problem is that if you're a face-to-face fundraiser, you might be running at attrition of 50, 60, 70% in year one. And
but it's not with a face-to-face. It's not year one that counts. It's years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's often years 5, 6, 7, 8, Charles. That's the problem. It can take that long. Are we done?
We are.
Right, there you go. That is Giles is lifting his finger in a way that he wants to speak. Off you go, Giles.
No, I only say that please give us feedback. If you'd like us to talk about more, if we haven't said what would you want to say, please let us know.
Yeah, and if there's anything else you like, one of the things that we're doing in these sessions is really just dropping tips in, little things that we've done over the years, little tests that we've seen, that stuff that's worked for one organisation, then it's worked for another, then it's worked for another. And if there are questions that you have, do let us know. Oh, I'll tell you what we do. Best question we get from this one, from this session, we'll let you have a book. I'm not sure which one it will be at the moment. We might get in touch. So ask a question, either on YouTube or on LinkedIn. Ask us a question and we'll bung you all in a hat and we'll send you. I've got at least one spare copy of Relationship Fundraising and I've got another copy of Thankology coming to me. So if you want to get your hands on those books, and they're £30 or £40 each, those books, so it's a nice prize to win. Ask us a question and whoever gives us the best question, we will we send you a book of your choice. How about that? So, yes, is that it?
We're done. You can go and enjoy your football.
Yes. Thank you very much for watching, and we will be back in another couple of weeks with I don't even know what we're going to do, but we'll speak soon. Thanks for watching. Happy fundraising.
Thank you.